Hey everyone, I'm Dimitri. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Grading Labs, where we partner with fintechs and financial services to automate customer support. I personally believe that over the next 3 years, about roughly 80 to 90% of customer interactions will happen through AI agents. And we have been on that journey for the last 2 years of actually automating customer support journeys for some of the best-known fintechs in the UK. And today, I would like to share a couple of learnings that we kind of learn along the way of how not to only make it work, but how to make it work amazingly well, such that you can actually create a significant uplift on your customer support experience. So before maybe I go into the details of what we did and kind of the learnings that we had, let me introduce you to the problem of why support is different for financial services. So this is a scenario which is very, very typical, but what happens many of the times, a customer gets in touch with customer support and says, hey, my payment didn't go through. So the natural kind of, the instinct would be here, oh, maybe it can be resolved by frontline support. But what it turns out more often than not is that, let's say, there's a flag on the KYC file that something is wrong or KYC is pending. So this query gets escalated to a back office team, which is responsible for KYC. And they look in the file and they realize, oh, there's actually maybe a PAP check that is pending because we couldn't verify whether somebody's a PAP or not. And what happens then, they escalate it further to an outbound team, and they reach out to the customer to collect additional documents, and then it goes back to the back office team, and then potentially it goes back to the front line. So really what I'm trying to say here, support is not as simple as everywhere else, right? So you know that better than many other verticals. It's highly intertwined in financial services, and you kind of need to make it work holistically. And so that's why the reason we are thinking about it is a lot more holistically, almost like a whole life cycle of customer operations. So we think about it in 3 pillars. One pillar is customer frontline support, so where the customers can get in touch with you and you can resolve simple queries. But really the other 2 pillars are as much key to it as the frontline support. You need to have a capability to do outbound communications because most of the financial services processes actually rely on you reaching out to the customer. Big for document collection or APP fraud if you want to reach out to the customer and verify whether that's really them who are making the payment to the Arabian prince, or really any other use cases like loans and collections. And finally, there are a lot of back office processes that are happening out of sight for the customer, but that are equally important to actually keep their account running. And so that's how we're thinking about it in 3 core pillars. In terms of what we actually do, so those are the use cases, but the way we're thinking about it is that when you think about automating customer operations with AI agents, you kind of can't reinvent too many things. So the way we thought about it, the way we are going about it in Grading Labs, we essentially said that everything needs to be an SOP-based, right? So that's how companies know how to scale customer operations today. They write hundreds of SOPs, and then they hire humans to follow those. So in our world, our customers write SOPs as well, but instead of hiring humans to execute on those SOPs, we actually provide them with a platform that can execute on those SOPs in exactly the same way as humans would do. And here, briefly, the results, and then I'm going to sort of explain you what were the key learnings to actually get to those. And what we have found over the last years is that you can actually generate significantly better customer satisfaction scores through AI agents than the existing team. So literally every single deployment that we had over the last years created much better CSAT scores. So how did we actually do it? Or what were the main learnings? And it's kind of to show you one of the guiding principles, I guess. Whenever we build AI agents, we ask, what would a human do? How would they solve that problem? And there are a couple of learnings. So let's start with the first one. Optimize for understanding, not best effort. What AI agents tend to do, especially if you implement simpler RAG techniques and kind of use only starting on the journey, they will just reply. They will just find an answer to every question, right? So that's fairly simple. That's what LLMs do. They complete sentences. And that's already kind of one of the main or most important sources of bad experiences, that you ask a question and then you get a reply, no matter whether it's relevant or not, because LLM thinks it might be relevant. But there are a lot of nuances in financial services, like customers say transactions and transfer very much interchangeably. And unless you really understand what they mean, like a transaction from bank to bank, or maybe card transactions, you actually can't reply most of those questions without making mistakes. And so what we needed to do is really kind of build ability to be able to navigate the domain space, and really be able to clarify with customers what type of transaction or transfer they mean. But transfer or transaction is just a trivial example, right? But there are like tens and hundreds of those more. And so really it's about building a system that really truly understands the customer rather than best effort replies to them. Knowing when not to participate is actually a very interesting one, because LLMs just will reply to everything, right? And it will always look sensible. But what we have found is that a much bigger problem to solve is actually figuring out when not to reply. And in the end, in our system that we have built, there are probably, I think by now, 20 or 30 reasons where AI agent can decide not to reply. There are a few very trivial ones when it's instructed to hand off to a human team, obviously. But then there might be just reasons where it understands that it will not be able to resolve something, or it understands that the customer wants to complain and they need to be referred to the complaints team, or it understands that it will not be able to perform a particular action that is required for this particular problem. And so really enumerating those reasons when the AI agent cannot participate and needs to give up is what actually drives a lot of the best experience that we have. So it's actually not the production of the answer, which is a trivial part. It's actually knowing when not to respond that matters a lot more. Then maybe a more trivial one, connecting to data safely. What we have found is that for a human, it takes quite a bit of time to kind of go in the system, research the account, and really be diligent in terms of finding out what the solution is. For the AI agents, it's actually very simple, because you can, if they are already integrated with the right data points, it's actually a very, very low effort and lift for them to look up a certain data points and to be able to provide a very precise and individual answer. So what we have found is actually those type of scenarios which require data actually yield much better experiences with AI agents. And then the last one is actually something that we discovered probably over the last half a year, and that's a particularly interesting one. So the way we have built our platform, we were always thinking, okay, how to create actually a data flywheel such that you can continuously improve what you have. And what we have created is that we have actually created a central pooling mechanism where all our customers can tag conversation and mark them with particular issues. And what we have based on this is we have an internal team that creates synthetic data on the basis of it, because we can't use just customers' data for it, where in the synthetic data we try to conceptually replicate the mistakes. And then we train reinforcement learning models over time that essentially capture hundreds of different nuances that are really, really relevant for financial services. And so that's how, over time, you can improve significantly the types of agents and conversational AI that you can build, because the out-of-the-box model will just not have all the nuance understanding that they actually need to do it perfectly well. And lastly, test to build trust. That's what we have found was kind of probably not a surprising learning, but I think it really, really matters to take people on a journey with them, because most of the companies, most of the financial institutions will deploy right now some of their first use cases online with agentic AI. And literally all the teams, be it risk, compliance, governance, they kind of need to be taken on the journey, because they need to figure out how to even deal and think about those things, right? So one of the first things that I always get asked, like, how does the risk model committee play into this? Does the AI agent make any decisions? Like, even such trivial things like that, they kind of all need to figure out. And so really the way we approach it is almost like a trust escalator framework. We define risk appetite, probably like every good project in a bank. We define risk appetite and really criteria, success criteria, with the governance teams together. So where we, for example, say, actually, if we prove that our AI agents can create significantly better compliance and quality assurance pass rates, like what would be the bar? And typically they say something, okay, for the humans, it's right now 90% quality assurance pass rate, so the AI agent needs to have at least 95. But this is the work that we typically do upfront, because it kind of defines your risk appetites and defines what good looks like. Then, as a next step, you typically would do offline evaluation with red teaming. Red teaming means you kind of try to break it. By now, there are lots of other companies who are actually doing that and try to break your agents in various different ways. And that's a very important steps in kind of building the initial confidence in your agent. But ultimately, you can't be fully confident before you go live. That's why when you go live, you actually do a very, very small rollout. You try with 10 to 20 conversations a day and do it for a period of a couple of weeks. And that's really where you get the most insight. That's where you really see how AI agents start to outperform potentially human teams. And that's where you can also get a lot of buy-in from the compliance teams, from the legal teams, and so on. So that's a crucial step where you really can't exhaustively test it offline, unfortunately, but you kind of need to eventually take a leap of faith and go with 10 conversations a day. And that's where you really kind of get the first thank yous, the first amazing experiences. You can measure the significantly improved CSAT, and that's what then builds on to a scale-up journey. I think in summary, it's a journey, but it's worth it. Worth it because over the next years, I'm sure many organizations will create fantastic experiences and kind of continue on that journey where financial services become even more intuitive and more delightful to use. And I believe that AI agents will contribute a lot to that. Yeah, I think that's it from my side. Thanks a lot.